Fantastic. Okay, now to this. Is Dark Brandon making a play to bribe young people for their votes?
No.
This week, the Biden administration reportedly is set to take a second crack at broad student loan forgiveness, even though the Supreme Court struck down its first attempt last year. According to the Wall Street Journal, Biden's advisors hope to use new rules to begin canceling waves of student debt in the run-up to the November election. Do we think, Molly, that this is buying votes?
Well, there's a pretty good chance that he'll be making some of these announcements out in Wisconsin. We know that's a pretty important swing state, so not a coincidence, most likely.
Students there, too. A lot of colleges.
Right, exactly. Great point. There was a recent poll in March. Social Fear, a research firm, polled voters. 48% say that canceling student loan debt is an important issue. 70% of Gen Z respondents. So if you want that youth vote, maybe you go to Wisconsin. Maybe you say, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I've already done, regardless of what the Supreme Court did, pushing back and trying to keep a promise that he's made. To young people.
But I don't, if I answered that polling question, is it an important issue? I would say, yes, it's an important issue because it shows what a phony our president is. He's trying to buy votes. I think it's a, do you think it is, I think the question should, Tammy, be, do you think it is fair that taxpayers are subsidizing higher education?
So obviously not. And I think that we have to also look at the rate of young people actually saying now that they'll vote for Trump. So there's a presumption that Americans can be bought, that they'll meet you at the Motel 6 if you throw enough money at them. That's not true. And it also, it's a reminder that when you're looking at the promises being made, that's an important word, because some of this stuff has not come through. And there have been some young people saying, we've heard about this and it hasn't happened for me. So why is it not happening for me? And so suddenly it's like a lot of talk in the moment, because some of these have worked and you're getting the refunds. Sometimes you're not, or it's like out in the future, or people know when they're being played for schmucks. Nobody likes it, whether you're 18 or whether you're 98. It's enough already. So I think this could backfire on them.
Well, I think this whole idea, the proposition is legally very dubious. As we saw from the Supreme Court, we'll see if this round of it survives further scrutiny. Obviously, this is a pander. Obviously, he's trying to buy off a certain segment of the electorate for votes. But here's what's so important to remember. The Democrats talk about fairness. They love that word. The majority of American adults did not go to college. Ergo, they do not have student loan debt.
Yeah.
The vast majority of Americans have zero student loan debt. And you have a lot of people who incurred debt, eyes wide open, signed a contract, and spent years paying it back. All of those people are being treated unfairly by this kind of giveaway from the President of the United States, doing it unilaterally with the stroke of a pen. I don't think he can do it, but this is what he's going to try to do. How is that fair? And by the way, if the worry is that the cost of college keeps going up, which it does in a ludicrous way, this will only encourage that pattern to continue, that trend to accelerate, because if there's this idea that there's a federal backstop for students, there's no incentive for the colleges whatsoever to try to rein in some of these costs. They'll just keep this party going.
How is this not even just indicating that American higher education is a lemon? That we have to give you back your money because you can't pay a loan back when you've gone through higher education.
Yeah.
So it's not even worth it is the messaging. It was a waste of time.
So he might gain a few here, but he's going to lose more here, and it's probably not going to be one for one. Listen to this from the Washington Post. Their op-ed, Joe Biden must go left and right at the same time. Here's the quote. Biden's challenge here is twofold. Many progressives, particularly younger ones, find it hard to see the 81-year-old president as an avatar of change. Biden's had a lot of work to do to show them how much reform he's ushered in and how much more he's proposing. But the institutional conservatives whose votes he also needs, particularly those in the corporate world, prefer quiet to boldness and the status quo to transformation and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And Molly, do you, I was just getting sick of reading there. All I wanted to hear is here's the deal. Do you agree with the not conservative Washington Post that Biden has a lot of work on his hands because he's got the left here, he's got the right here, and
America.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of issues that are hurting him right now with the youth vote, particularly when it comes to Israel. There's a big challenge there he's facing with 38% of youth vote 18 to 29 saying that Israel's reasons for fighting Hamas are valid. That's pretty low. So, but now we're seeing changes in the way this administration is addressing Israel. So maybe that's part of the broader, you hate to say it, but political challenges that they're facing, and they may be doing this because of that. That's just one aspect of this. We know that the numbers have ticked down. We know student debt may be something that they're using to change things and try to turn things around in some of these swing states.
Yeah. And I mean, if I'm correct, in the last election, younger voters were at record highs. Am I right?
Yep.
For the
Came out
turnout?
Huge numbers for him, and that might not happen this time. But the idea that's like, oh, all he has to do is go left with some people and right with others.
No.
If this were a deft, quality politician, maybe, this is Joe Biden.
Yeah, not so not so deft. All right.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.